heavens produces in this prolific soil an early maturity which is truly astonishing. Flowers full and perfect, as if they had been cultivated by the hand of a florist, with all their captivating odors, and with all the variegated charms which color and nature can produce, here in the lap of elegance and beauty decorate the smiling groves. Soft zephyrs gently breathe on sweets, and the inhaled air gives a glow of health and vigor that seems to ravish the intoxicated senses. The Virginian government now resolved to pour a tide of immigration into these as yet unexplored realms, south of the Ohio. 400 acres of land were offered to every individual who would build a cabin, clear a lot of land, and raise a crop of corn. This was called a settlement right. It was not stated how large the clearings should be, or how extensive the cornfield. Several settlements were thus begun in Kentucky, when there was a new and extraordinary movement which attracted universal attention. A very remarkable man, named Richard Henderson, appeared in North Carolina. Emerging from the humblest walks of life, and unable even to read until he had obtained maturity, he developed powers of conversational eloquence and administrative ability of the highest order. The Cherokee Indians claimed the whole country bounded by the Kentucky, the Ohio, and the Cumberland rivers, and we know not how much more territory extending indefinitely to the south and west. Colonel Henderson formed an association of gentlemen, which he called the Transylvania Company. Making a secret journey to the Cherokee country, he met 1,200 chiefs in council, and purchased of them the whole territory, equal to some European kingdoms, bounded by the above mentioned rivers. For this realm, above 100 miles square, he paid the insignificant sum of 10 wagon loads of cheap goods, with a few firearms and some spirituous liquors. Mr. Henderson, to whom the rest of the company seemed to have delegated all their powers, now assumed the position of proprietor, governor, and legislator of his magnificent domain, which he called Transylvania. It seems that Boone accompanied Colonel Henderson to the council of the Cherokee chieftains, which was held at Watauga, the southern branch of the Holston River. Boone had explored nearly the whole of this region, and it was upon his testimony that the company relied in endeavoring to purchase these rich and fertile lands. Indeed, as we have before intimated, it has been said that Boone in his wonderful and perilous explorations was the agent of this secret company. No treaties with the Indians were sure of general acquiescence. There were always discontented chieftains. There were almost always conflicting claims of hostile tribes. There were always wandering tribes of hunters and of warriors, who, exasperated by the treatment which they had received from vagabond white men, were ever ready to wreak their vengeance upon any band of emigrants they might encounter. Colonel Henderson's treaty was made in the month of March, 1775. With characteristic vigor he immediately made preparations for the settlement of the kingdom of which he was the proud monarch. The first thing to be done was to mark out a feasible path through which emigrants might pass, without losing their way, over the mountains and through the wilderness, to the heart of this new Eden. Of all the men in the world, Daniel Boone was the one to map out this route of 500 miles. He took with him a company of road makers, and in a few months opened a path which could be traversed by pack horses, and even by wagons, to a place called Boonesville, on the Kentucky River, within about 30 miles of the present site of Lexington. The Indian hunters and warriors, notwithstanding the treaties into which the chieftains of the North and the South had entered, watched the construction of this road with great solicitude. They knew full well that it would ere long secure their expulsion from their ancient hunting grounds. Though no general warfare was organized by the tribes, it was necessary to be constantly on the watch against lawless bands, who were determined to harass the pioneers in every possible way. In the following letter Boone communicated to Colonel Henderson the hostility which they had, perhaps unexpectedly, encountered. It was dated the 1st of April, and was sent back by a courier through the woods. Dear Colonel: After my compliments to you, I shall acquaint you with my misfortunes. On March the 25th, a party of Indians fired on my company about half an hour before day, and killed Mr. Twitty and his negro, and wounded Mr. Walker very deeply, but I hope he will recover. On March the 28th, as we were hunting for provisions, we found Samuel Tell's son, who gave us an account that the Indians fired on their camp on the 27th day. My brother and I went down and found 2 men killed and scalped, Thomas McDowell and Jeremiah McPeters. I have sent a man down to all the lower companies, in order to gather them all to the mouth of the Otter Creek. My advice to you, sir, is to come or send as soon as possible. Your company is greatly desired, for the people are very uneasy, but are willing to stay and venture their lives with you. And now is the time to frustrate their (the Indians') intentions, and keep the country while we are in it. If we give way to them now, it will ever be the case. This day we start from the battle ground to the mouth of Otter Creek, where we shall immediately erect a fort, which will be done before you can come or send. Then we can send 10 men to meet you, if you send for them. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, Daniel Boone. Boone immediately commenced upon the left bank of the Kentucky River, which here ran in a westerly direction, the erection of a fort. Their position was full of peril, for the road makers were but few in number, and Indian warriors to the number of many hundreds might at any time encircle them. Many of these Indians had also obtained muskets from the French in Canada, and had become practiced marksmen. Nearly 3 months were busily occupied in the construction of this important fort. Fortunately, we have a minute description of its structure, and a sketch of its appearance, either from the pencil of Colonel Henderson, or of someone in his employ. The fort or fortress consisted of a series of strong log huts, enclosing a large interior or square. The parallelogram was about 260 feet in length, and 150 in breadth. These cabins, built of logs, were bullet proof. The intervals between them were filled with stout pieces of timber, about 12 feet high, planted firmly in the ground, in close contact with each other, and sharpened at the top. The fort was built close to the river, with one of its angles almost overhanging the water, so that an abundant supply could be obtained without peril. Each of the corner houses projected a little, so that from the port holes any Indian could be shot who should approach the walls with ladder or hatchet. This really artistic structure was not completed until the 14th day of June. The Indians from a distance watched its progress with dismay. They made one attack, but were easily repelled, though they succeeded in shooting one of the emigrants. Daniel Boone contemplated the fortress on its completion with much satisfaction. He was fully assured that behind its walls and palisades bold hearts, with an ample supply of ammunition, could repel any assaults which the Indians were capable of making. He now resolved immediately to return to Clinch River, and bring his family out to share with him his new and attractive home. CHAPTER VI.